How you doing, guys? This is John Minihart. And again, I have a little speech impediment, and I hope you guys can understand me. It's partly gorgeous out here, and I will go for a walk later. But I just want to share some of my thoughts and opinions on certain things. Some it will be about politics, some about maybe sports. I'm a big, wrestling fan, and my thoughts on being a longtime fan and about WrestleMania coming up. Maybe that's just my opinion. I'm also a Christian and many give my what I see in the Bible and what God has been doing in my life, and hopefully it will help other people. And again, I'm no scholar. I'm no anything. I'm no expert. I'm just a man and a man of God giving his opinion. And I think what President Trump is doing, in my opinion, is cutting oil off from Iran, so everybody has to buy from us, and stuff. And this time, what the nighttime bombings did was great, but he didn't finish the job, and now he's finishing the job, and the liberals and people who hate him on the right, or so-called right, they're never going to be happy, no matter what President Trump does say. They're all going to be triggered. They're going to all have TDS, Trump syndrome, and it's just incredible, and look, I don't like everything President Trump has done, like with AI and stuff, but for the most part, I believe he's 99.99999%. He's done a great job. And he didn't have to do this, and after he won, like Obama, he just won the seat, but he loves his country and he's trying to save it. And I truly believe that God protected him through all everything for this time in history. And I think sometimes with the liberals, ICE is a you know, federal organization. No local or state government can stop them, and stuff. And if you don't like ICE, then get involved in the government and change the law, if you can. And you got to ask yourself, why do the liberals want to keep illegal aliens here for votes, Because, reasonable Democrats and the independents are leaving the Democrat and the far left Liberal Party, and coming to the right, you know. And I'm a conservative, I'm not going to, shed my, you know, or hide. I love this country. I love our law enforcement. I love our great military, men and women. And I pray for them every day, or mostly every day. And I pray for all government, like the Bible says. And I pray for both sides. That we can live in peace in one day, to live together in spite of our differences. And look, I get along with everybody, right, left, up, down. I mean, I'm a Yankee fan. And I live in, where the Red Sox are their team. And I can get along with anybody, And I think that, I mean, the people that are trying to divide us, is the leaders on both sides. And that's why they hate President Trump. Because, he can't be bought. He doesn't need the money. And that's why they hate him so much. and stuff. And I just think with Strait of Hormuz, I don't really know that much about it or if anything. And but it's, with all this conflict, it is a conflict. It is not a war. And stuff. And I don't know. Upsets me. And I think again, it's more on us where we got to see past the initial thought of President Trump. Okay, he does things to wake people up, you know, and then get them to think, is he really going to do it or not? And that's why he wants his enemies or, people that don't like him. He's not going to tell what he's going to do to anybody, except maybe his closest, people. And I think that with the liberals, and they will always have TDS, and stuff. But it's just sad. Well, you just can't have a respectful conversation. Some I can, some. And we don't have to agree. We don't. And the thing that upsets me the most is, I'm not going to mention the names of these podcasters, but you know who they are. They were fake, Trumpers. They used President Trump, and now they don't need him anymore, and now they're bashing on him, and stuff like that. And they're wolf in sheep's clothing. And I lost a lot of respect for a lot of them, for doing that. And some comedians too. I'm not gonna mention who. You know? And again, people are gonna have different opinions about things. It's fine, you don't have to like everything that anybody does. And that's the freedoms that we still have, I think. You know? You know, but again, it's if people don't go vote in November, and I say vote for whoever you want. I prefer people to vote red, but like with New York City, you say you reap what you sowed, and what do you think he was gonna do, And again, I'm no expert. I'm just I can't be controlled by anybody. I can't be canceled. I don't want likes or views. I don't. I'm not trying to make money off of this, and there's really no set thing. No, what I'm going to talk about, just what I'm thinking about, and stuff. But I just think again, if House and Senate Republicans never get their act together, are we gonna lose them in November? And that's all I gotta say. And I just, I don't know, guys. I mean, I think again, we gotta pray. We gotta pray to Jesus Christ, you know, for this country and for this world right now. You know, and that He will, help us and protect us, and I hope and pray that the United States of America will always be the strongest country in this world, and stuff. And guys, take care. God bless. I hope you get something out of it. Please let me know in the comments. But please be respectful. No swearing, no bullying. And please, I would love to hear from you. And if you like it, don't like it. And what do you want me to talk about? And stuff. So, all right. Well, take care and God bless.